So amended.
There we go. So at least we got it. Admit. One more. Okay. All right. Max, I guess you also see the admit button or thing that happens there, so you can help if I fail to
unfortunately, I actually don't, since I didn't sign into UH.
Oh,
yeah,
I see. Oh, that's right.
I'm
Okay.
using a different Zoom account.
That's fine. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Next time I'll remember.
That's not a problem. I do get the beeping, so as soon as I start talking, and I know I can only do one thing at a time, so I have to choose between talking or listening. Wait, they're strange. All right. Well, I think we can start. I think we have everybody. There's Yvonne. Hi, Yvonne.
Hello, Paul.
All right. I think everybody's here, unless someone is waiting for someone else that hasn't shown yet. I think this is it. All right. So welcome to this delayed summer community meeting. It hasn't been one since, well, when did we have one? March or something like that? I can't quite remember now. It's been a while. I'm supposed to aim for these every month, but as you all know, I've been on sabbatical. Still am on sabbatical at the University of Oxford, and I've decided to not let that sabbatical be a GMT sabbatical. It's actually a research sabbatical. So that means that I'm not, 24/7 working on GMT, and so things piling up quick. I notice I don't process things on a daily basis. So there's a lot of stuff that hasn't happened that normally would have happened, but it will pick up speed at some future date. I might as well just shuffle things around a bit on the agenda here. So tomorrow is my last day in Oxford. And I already packed up the infamous iMac Pro and padded it and taken lots of photos and sent it off to Oslo, where it will be met by me later this fall when I relocate to that frozen tundra of a land in mid-October. So it's going to be opened by Clint Conrad and turned on to make sure it's working and not broken again, because that happened the first time we sent it here. So that's going on. I'm flying back on Sunday to New York, where I'll spend some time. I'm going to stop by Lamont and see Tony Watts, my host here in Oxford, who apparently is in the US. So I'll talk to him a little bit there. And then I fly to Hawaii, where there is a major operation of finishing up the house, selling cars, get rid of stuff, packing, all that stuff before we fly out with the cat, which is the biggest problem of all, to Hawaii, from Hawaii to Norway. Yeah, it's only certain flights and certain airlines and certain routes that you can do this with, and you have to get approval. But when you call them, there's nothing on your ticket or in the record that shows that you got the approval. So it's a little bit on faith that you show up at the airport with a cat in the box and hope they don't say, well, we don't have any record of you coming with a cat. So I'm a little concerned about this part, but that's where we are. So it'll be an interesting couple of months. This probably also means that I won't be doing GMT 24/7, given all those activities. But eventually I will settle down in Oslo, and eventually, after we bought beds and furniture and food and cats and stuff, I will get back to normal. So it will be a little bit slow the next few months. Not that I need to apologize for this, just so you're aware that if I'm not getting on the issues right away, it doesn't mean I don't see them. It just means I'm busy.
I had the feeling, Paul, that getting your US citizenship means almost certainly that you'll leave the country.
The timing of that was immaculate. This is way before COVID. I just happened to get it when Norway finally allowed dual citizenships as of January 2020. So I applied, timed it so that I would get the okay early in 2020, and I did, and Trump signed the passport and all that stuff. And then COVID struck, and then my Norwegian passport, expired because I couldn't renew it and all that stuff. So I'm traveling as an American, proud of it, and that's how it's done until next month. No, in November, when my Norwegian passport renewal finally happens due to supply issues. So yeah, it's been it's a good thing. I wouldn't have been able to travel here otherwise, right?
Yeah, but what is it about getting your citizenship and then leaving the country? I mean, we both
I know
within 2 years from getting the citizenship, we leave.
Well, I know in my case, the long-term plan kind of was probably to relocate to Norway. And I figured it was a good plan B insurance policy to get the citizenship in case, a future Congress decides that, oh, people who leave the country should no longer get Social Security, or, some other crazy scheme that you could imagine happening that I wanted to prevent. So,
Yeah.
plus I lived in the US for more than half my life. It's not unreasonable that I am a citizen. I paid a lot of taxes, put it that way, to the US. There are some unresolved issues with my positions in Hawaii. I have written requests to the deans, the last two deans, and got approval to work from Oslo, even though I'm a professor of Hawaii, because I have grants that involve NSF grants that involve faculty at University of Oslo. So this is the perfect place for me to actually work on those grants. However, given COVID and work from home policies and concerns about no one showing up at work, UH is now concerned about anyone who's not working physically in Hawaii, let alone outside the country. So I had to rewrite my application all the way to the provost. It is pending as of today. And who knows, they may say, oh, sorry, no, you can't, no, that's not possible. You can't be a professor and be in Oslo. So if that happens, then I have to pull the plug and retire at the end of this year, which is fine. It's I've considered all these options. I've done all the math. It's just interesting that I have 2 approvals from 2 deans, and yet we got to go for the provost now. So it shouldn't really matter too much to what we do. It just matters a little bit how I pay myself and where I am and what my allegiances are and all that stuff. So I'll keep you up to date on that as I know. As I said, I don't know right now. All I know is that we have a ticket with possibly a slot for a cat in October 12th.
Well, if the cat can fit in a carrier that is small enough, you can actually carry it in the plane.
That's what we're doing.
That there are no more than X amount of other animals on the plane. So
Yep. We've gone through all that. We know there's max 4 slots. I think this was learned after they tried to put 100 snakes on the plane. There was just too many snakes, so they reduced it to 4, only 4 animals per flight. So we checked all that stuff, and we measured things, and all the airplanes have slightly different dimensions, and there's inches and centimeters, and travel agents aren't aware of these things, and it goes on and on and on. So right now we don't have permission on the last KML leg from Amsterdam to Oslo, because they say the cage is too big, even though it's smaller than their own stated dimensions. So that sort of stuff we deal with. It just takes forever to get it all done.
All
yeah.
right. Well,
It's so, but anyway, so that was 12 minutes of me talking about life. So I'll move, that's agenda item 6, I guess. So I'll move up to the front now on agenda item 1, gotten that out of the way. So as you know, because Max got a better offer than what I could do, it's a real job. She resigned sometime in April, I guess, and is now on the regular team, which is you guys. And that left me with decisions. I have grant money for supporting someone, although I'm kind of been here a long time, going back to Hawaii for a month and then going to Norway. So I know what to do with, a 1.5 year of postdoc money. So I consulted the elders, and after some back and forth, we thought it might be a good experiment to try to hire a seasoned C programmer to help with certain targeted aspects. So it's an experiment. So we had a seasoned C program in Roger Davis at SOAS, that Roger knows well too, goes way back. He's certainly a seasoned C programmer. There aren't so many of those people around anymore. So I had a chat with Roger. He was interested in picking up some work for us. So we're sort of doing it on a trial basis to see how it works out, because we don't really know how it will work out for some random person to come in and start coding for us. Is this a good idea or not? So he and I understand, we have a deal that, we try it on a month-to-month basis. He has a cruise coming up, he's gonna go away, he comes back, that sort of thing. He's not full-time. But I'll tell you a little bit about the experience so far. Roger's not on this Zoom because it's 3 a.m. in Hawaii, and I didn't really think of this when I scheduled this one. It's hard to get everyone, then we would lose Dong Dong. So, it's a problem with the periodicity of the Earth. We need to spin up so it's less hours. Anyway, so the first thing was onboarding of, how do you get a new person in and working on GMT? So Roger has been coding forever, but he's usually been doing it by himself. So he has not needed to do, GitHub and version control and sharing with groups and stuff. So there was all that stuff of learning how we do things. And that's gotten to the point where everything is sort of working fine. But that's, there's a learning curve for everything. Then it's the whole idea of editing other people's C code and figuring out what the hell is going on, which is also not always pleasant. So I decided we'll start with something that's sort of contained and not going across all of GMT, because I didn't want to be in daily supervision mode of explaining how things are done, because now is my time being wasted instead of someone else. So I started him on this long option implementation, which is one of the things we have told NSF we will be doing in the GMT core. So what that means is that instead of having -R and -J and -P and so on, there will be words, keywords, just like PyGMT and GMT Julia are doing, right? That's their interface. So the way I imagine this would work to minimize labor is that we have a little translation table, which is basically a structure that relates the short version of the options, their short directives and their short modifiers, to the long versions. And then when GMT sees long modifiers coming on the command line, it translates those first to the short version. So there has to be a one-to-one correspondence there. And then the regular parsers, which only know about the short version, will parse, right? The alternative is to rewrite 150 parsers to deal with the long version and the short version. So that was out of the question. So this seems to work pretty well. I had tested this a year ago when I wrote the translation table for the common option, the R, J, all those guys. And with some back and forth, I think those are now working pretty well. And then, of course, it's the 150 modules that have all kinds of local options. And not all of them have been wrapped by PyGMT and Julia, I think. So we're working on that. And Roger has gone through, I think, about a dozen now of modules. Plus, when we do this, of course, you run into trouble, right? You realize that, oh, we hadn't thought about this in the common option, or wait a minute, shouldn't this option have some more modifiers? Yeah, you're right, there's some documentation. So there's a little back and forth there to polish up things to make sure everything is airtight. And then I'm sort of randomly picking different kinds of module for him to play with to see if you run into anything that affects the whole premise of the one-to-one correspondence. And he has found several issues where it was basically minor bugs, I would say, or bad documentation, or not completed transitions from some options that we had to fix up, that he doesn't know about, that I have to go in and, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot this. So I think we'll work through all those things. And then the idea was, instead of letting Roger get entirely bored doing this for 150 modules, we would sort of open this up to the community to help out a little bit. So I'll do a bunch, but it basically, we want it to be as simple as taking a table and filling out some words, right? So PyGMT and Julia has already picked a lot of keywords. We'll try to stick with those unless, strongly disagree with that. But, and then modifiers. And if that's generally okay, then we have a good system for translation. So that's sort of where that is. What Roger will do next is up for discussion to some extent. I know we had, yeah.
While you're on this issue, I once, very long time ago, had considering, implementing something. Now I've forgotten the subroutine, but there is some standard routine where you can do this with the long options that become short options. But then you always, a long option could only be translated to one short option, and in the alphabet. So you couldn't have more than 52 or so long options, which I found limiting, so I never gone into it.
Yeah,
that routine then also allowed to have the space behind the letter, just like most C programs do. and with the long option, the equal sign after the long option, or not the equal. Also combine options that have no arguments, like we have, for example, in our sync minus AVZ, or in tar minus XVF, whatever. Is that considered as well, or do we keep on wanting to insist to leave away the space behind the option and not gathering? Well, I don't think we have any option that has no arguments or optional arguments, so that doesn't really help. But or almost any, but at least that some people can use the space, which I think sometimes still is one of the questions asked. Why doesn't this work?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you brought this up. I think it's the GetOps package of things.
GetOps, yes.
Yeah. And at the time, I remember I looked at this a little bit, and I can't quite remember all the arguments, but I found it limiting to some extent. Plus, it would impose some changes to the GMT way of doing things that I didn't like. So in the end, I was concerned about the translation between the short and old. Without, we don't want to change the short and the old syntax because of backwards compatibility.
That I remember was the case why we dropped it. But now that you are introducing all those new long options, maybe we also need to make sure that we're flexible enough to allow the spaces.
Yeah, we could think about that. I think that's put it this way. Right now, the way the long option in GMT looks like are sort of keyword equal value kind of things. So the notion of a space there is less appealing to me. So if you have, hyphen region equals space, west, east, north, south, it doesn't seem to be.
No, after equal, you should not allow a space, but either a space or the equal. And also what you usually have with those long options, you can truncate the long options to something that's unique.
Yeah, sure.
I have that in some of my own software. So region could be minus reg. Would be sufficient if there's nothing that starts with reg.
Right. That we can handle, because right now it's, for testing purposes, we're doing a string encomp directly, but it could be shortened to the unique. That's certainly fine. It just adds more checking, right? You allow, reg XYZ, or do you check that it's still a valid word, how many letters you give it? So anyway, so
replacing. Replacing the equals by a space sounds interesting. I think it looks better to the eye, but it should be possible to replace because I know what you are talking about, Remco. I also made an attempt at the time, I remember, to try to replicate the GetOPT functionality with the GMT machinery. And it worked, but not all the time. So the work for insisting on that would be too much, and I dropped it. But I remember that. So replacing the equals by a space, if that is possible, would be an interesting thing to consider. But I also want to talk something about these long options and work from Roger. Well, I think we need a bit more discussion about that, because, well, I give you examples. Roger has been removing all the underscores. This thing is there is no solution anywhere for that. But for example, I don't know if it was within us or somewhere else. Then you said one option would be to have what makes sense or be reasonable to do. For example, no skip. I have it in Julia, no underscore skip, and an alias, no skip. So I see no skip perfectly as a single word. But I saw several options where he joined 3 words.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That I don't agree, and I will not implement it in Julia.
I think generally,
there is no rule for that. This is difficult. Because
I think most programs.
One is too long, I want underscores for my eyes.
One is short,
but you cannot come up with a straight rule. You say, well, when these and that something you can program. You have to apply people's sense to the decisions. But I don't think the solution is to have everything always without underscores.
No, I think most programs with long options usually do the hyphens instead of the underscores. So no skip would be no hyphen skip.
Yeah, the
I
hyphens
don't
is
know if
another
that's
story.
Great, but that's
Yeah.
usually what's done. If you look at
But
the
the
most
hyphens is
common
another
C
story.
programs, that's what they do.
Yeah.
I don't know if it applies here in these cases, but the hyphens is another story. On the wrappers, on the other environments, MATLAB or whatever, minus is a subtraction. So
Yes.
when you put the minus in the word, you will the shell that runs it will see it as a subtraction, and not always. If it knows it is a string, you will not do it. But this opens to many troubles. I wouldn't mind at all to have the minus, but I don't know if it can work. That's something to see.
Yeah.
But the problem with the minus is that it can be interpreted as a subtraction.
Sure. Yeah, I can answer all these questions if it's okay. There's three ways to do this, right? You either have in general, it's the hyphenated version, it's the underscores, it's the camel case where you upper case letters for the words. We don't have to decide this today. These tables are not released. It's all, in works. That some of the keywords might change as I actually start looking at them more carefully. I basically let Roger use his judgment to coming up with sensible words. And most of the time, there's words I would agree with, and others I don't agree, right? But it's not important right now. This is just getting the testing the capability. And then at some point, we'll have to have a serious discussion if we should do underscores or do no underscores or do both or do camel case or even have hyphens. We can do all those things if we feel this is important. But for now, we're just stuck with, trying to get it to run the way it is.
There's one thing I think is already important at this step. For example, the last PR is submitted for 3 modules. One of them I looked at more was GRD track. And the thing is, he's speaking a lot of keywords that are not neither in Julia nor in PyGym. So, and I think we need also, and if you let, there are 130, 140 modules. If you let accumulate them all to at the end decide, we'll not decide and say, well, whatever it is good.
Okay, no, I agree with that.
Maybe it is better that one by one we have, for example, a table or what each of the wrappers do and proposal will not agree for something to discuss. For example, I saw several choices on GRD track that I do not agree. And if you let them accumulate, we won't look at it again.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point, Joachim. I'll talk to Roger about this. I thought I told him to look at Julia and Python.
No, he does for sure, but sometimes he does not like which is normal. Each one has own opinion, and he picks a different one. And then my point is, if you let these cases accumulate
up, sure. I agree with that. We'll have it do one by one, and we'll have a little discussion. At least
table
as you get going.
With, what exists and what.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're interested in looking at these tables.
I look at a couple and that one I don't like. Other ones I'll say, okay, this one is much better to what I have in Julia, so I will replace or add as an alias.
Yeah, good. All right. So we'll continue with this experiment a little bit longer just to reach sort of that place where we have to open it up to others to contribute to, I guess. And I'll talk to Roger about the things that came up here. Those are good points. As for the next step, I think it's better that I give some proposals to you guys on GitHub about what those are instead of having a wide-ranging discussion right now. I mean, there are things, ideally we want to get to the point where he can help with, Gdal proj issues and the bridge, but there's a long way to get there. I think it's we have to remember that those of us who have done the C program in GMT have done it since last century, right? It's accumulated knowledge it's hard for Roger to just pick up on. Like, oh, it's easy. It's just going to do it because there's all these intricacies and interrelations between modules and libraries and things. So I want to sort of ramp him up slowly to get used to the GMT environment before we go for those really hard ones that have been sitting there for a long time for a reason, right? If this was a week hard work for me, it probably would have happened. But if it's way longer than that, then I hesitate to take it on. I think. So I'll get back to you guys on sort of future plans. I'll be meeting with Roger in a couple of weeks and see what does he think about this? Does he enjoy it? Is it just a chore? Is it boring? It's important too. So we'll I'll keep you abreast on that. Any questions related to this topic that we want to talk about right now? So I will follow up on Joachim's points and have a chat with Roger about. I agree with this. I noticed that he's lumping several modules together in one PR, and of course it's better to have a single PR for each thing instead of messing it up, and then we can have a little slower review process for those things. The good things, all these things are under specific compiler directives, so no one's actually activating any of these things unless you go and change some advanced settings, right? They're not available to anyone unless they compile it themselves. So nothing is being broken in that sense. Everything runs fine unless you change your compilation settings, the advanced.
So one thing, the table for the non-common options is already in the code, empty or not?
No, I was thinking about that. Maybe we should.
Because if it is not, one step could be just fill them all with empty.
Yeah,
and
that's what
then
I'm saying.
Because the hard thing is the discussion and the decision. Then to put the string in that quote, empty quote, it's a simple thing that many of us can do.
Yeah, exactly. No, I was going to say that, Joachim, and that my plan right now, it's only the modules that we have worked on that has the structure. But I was going to suggest we just put in an empty structure in all the other ones. I can write a script that does this, and it has nothing. So no action is taken on an empty structure, basically, and then we can fill it in as you said. So I agree with that. We'll do that. Okay, so the next one on the agenda is the remote data sets. So just recap, GMT supplies a whole slew, a dozen or so of global gridded remote data sets, grids or images. Think Dave Samuels' bathymetry, JEPCO, gravity, geo, that sort of thing. And these things get updated from time to time. They're not completely static. And we don't have a foolproof system, I think, to tell us when any of these things change. So we have some systems like this for other things that change, like when the scientific color maps, CPTs change, we are notified by a cloud CI job, right? So we just have to do the similar things for all these remote data sets. But anyway, we know that JEPCO 2022 is out, and we have 2021, I believe. So and it's 2 grids. Dave has updated the gravity and vertical gravity gradients. And eventually, I think he plans to do the topography once a year. Maybe Walter knows more about the timeline there, but I think that's what he sort of said, that they keep getting more data, Altica and so on. So the gravity gets better and better over time. But it's no point cranking out a new bathymetry every 2 months. It's not going to really. You sort of want to wait around long enough. So maybe an annual schedule is likely for the bathymetry and the gravity for the next X years. I don't know. Anyway, so this gives an opportunity to test the process of, how do we update these files? Because there's a process, right? We distribute hundreds of files for each data set, the tiles, the different resolutions, and the whole package that it's updated on the server. So so far, only I and Max have sort of done this, and Federico was very interested in getting this updated, the files. So we gave him an account on the SOS server and letting him loose, basically. There's some instructions how to do this, and Max filled in more details, I think. But then, there's all things that are not written down. So sort of the innate knowledge that one might have, having done this forever, that is not written down. So it's good to have Federico go through and see how far he gets and then run into some problem that we can fix. And the idea is to make this, simpler. It is not 100% automated. It's a little bit, elbow grease and command line running things. So I don't know, Federico, do you want to say a few words about your experience? what if you learn anything about trying to do this?
No, right now I am waiting to have the authorization to copy the files, but I have to wait that, and then I will see what can I add to the files to the. Maybe I can write something to put there in the repository, but now I am waiting to finish the first time that I make an upload.
Oh, I see. So they haven't gotten back to you yet about the permission yet. Is that right? You haven't heard anything?
No, I am
Oh,
waiting.
Okay. Oh, I'll definitely ping them because I sent them email. Seems like Friday
Yes.
or Thursday, whatever it was. Okay. So I'll try to get that organized. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry about that. It's, they're
Oh,
not
okay.
always paying attention. But that's great. So thanks for trying all that stuff. And the idea is that once Federico is successfully getting through a whole remote data set, he will have lots of experience doing that and find lacks in the documentation and steps that has to be improved. And, so we will work on a better version 2, I guess, for how to do this so that almost anyone can do it. That's the idea. So I've written, I think all the hard work is done, and the scripts that, downsamples grids and splits them into tiles and all that stuff. That is general enough to work for all the data sets, I think. But how you put it on the original server and stuff, that's a little bit manual. So anyway, that's coming. We'll have to work on that. If any of you think of large global grid type data sets that we should look at, feel free to propose that at any time. It's heavy on topography and geopotential stuff right now. We also want to be that. Yeah, go ahead.
I know there is one European 25 meters or less topography. It's a big thing, lots of tiles. I don't remember now by heart, but
Copernicus.
I thought of that one.
Is it the Copernicus DEM?
Yes, Copernicus stuff.
Okay, it's a global.
It's 20.
It's global, yeah.
Okay.
It's global. Okay, but it's 25 meters.
I'm not sure about
or even
Arctic
less.
and Antarctic, but definitely like at least 60 to 60.
Yeah,
I guess.
Well, there's this Aster and some other data sets north and south of 60 that is imagery that the Minnesota group made into some sort of global mosaic thingy, and I downloaded that. It's like terabytes of raw data with lots of outliers and stuff, and my computer in Hawaii ran for a month trying to make tiles of 1 arc-second north, and it looked kind of ugly. It looked like, oh, I need more cleaning up and manual interaction, so I sort of dropped it. But there is those kind of data sets north and south of 60 that can improve the SRTM data sets there. And ideally, we would like to have 1 arc-second for the whole planet. I think that would be good for land. So maybe the Copernicus site has something that has gone through that kind of processing and is cleaner. So yeah, maybe we should look at that.
Andre, Andre asked in the chat if we can add planetary data sets. That was one of the goals of a proposal we didn't get funded, but I think if there are any volunteers who want to work on the recipes for those, it would still be pretty interesting for the community. Yeah, I already downloaded things like, messenger data from Mercury, and that there's good lunar topography and things. Well, ready to go with that, and NASA stiffed us. And, part of me don't want to work for free for NASA, who uses GMT heavily. I mean, the whole GMT grids for Moon and Mars are all GMT produced, right? Yet they felt obliged to stiff us on a measly amount of money. So I guess I'm not sort of rushing in there to spend my time processing for them for free, but I'm happy to enable it for anyone else who wants to get the good, get Mars in there, Mars relief, at Mars relief, and then you can get easy maps of Mars. That'd be fine.
And anyway, these things will pile up to a huge amount of that. We cannot think of expanding our current mechanism of having them stored in servers, our servers. That, for example, the planetary and the other things, the Copernicus we just talked, they are too big. Ideally, we would have a mechanism to download them, similar to what it does to our server stuff, but not replicating those data in our server, because that's an endless thing that never stops growing very fast. Oh, sure. Yeah, no, just look at the JEPCO data. So if you want the JEPCO grid, you go to this site, you click on the thing, eventually you get into the download, and you download this stupid 8 gigabyte grid, right? Something like that, 8 gigabytes. Is that right? Yeah.
you know, after
Okay.
we've done
Yeah.
processing, it's less than a gigabyte. You know, it's just much smaller because they just use, you know, double precision or some stupid thing, right? So we're doing clever, I think it's clever processing of dumbing it down to 16 bits and with compression and all that stuff. It's just a tiny fraction of the original data. So I think we can do better than those. That's why we're doing it ourselves, because it's hopeless otherwise. Yeah, Walter.
Thanks, Paul. While you guys were talking about Copernicus, I was looking for some info. I put a link in the chat, and it seems to say that download is unrestricted, but they want the user to register.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, if GMT takes it then and gives it to lots of people, then that sort of defeats the purpose of them tracking who's using it. On the other hand, the argument could be made that if GMT takes it once and then does all these things you say about smart compression and so on, then GMT has made a slightly different product that has some added value, in which case maybe GMT or whichever developer it is that does that could be the registered user and the essentially the originator or creator of that smarter what am I trying to say? Compressed product. I'm not a lawyer, obviously. I don't know if that complies, but I'm just pointing out that they are asking for registration.
Yeah, that's true. That's true of a lot of stuff. NASA, you have to get an account. I mean, they all think that, you know, the only people who do science are people who work in a tiny area, want to download once from some place, and it's not a big hassle. And people who do global things don't want to get huge chunks everywhere. They suffer and suffer and suffer and do that stuff. So I don't know. We have to ask them for permission, obviously. They will say, no, you should go through our portal and make it useless. But anyway, that's, you know, that's where we are. So we can't distribute data. We are not allowed to, of course.
That's the same issue with the GADM.
Yeah.
We can use it, but we cannot redistribute it.
So the moral is that one should not work on global problems. It's better to work on small local problem areas, so then you don't have this issue as something to worry about. So I think that's the moral there. All right. So anyway, so if you have more thoughts about data sets you want to include and things, just contribute that one way or the other up the chain, and we'll see what can be done. We still have unresolved issues with, you know, coastlines and rivers and political boundaries. We're aware of all those things. So it's not for lack of knowing what to do, it's for lack of time. Now moving on to the next topic, which is GMT summits. You know, so one blessing of COVID is that we haven't been able to spend any money on summits and you know, getting together and have a beer or anything like that. So it's kind of crazy. So we have lots of money in the grants for that purpose. The trouble with grants is that they eventually reach some deadline by which you have to spend it. Otherwise, Uncle Sam will take the money back and waste it on something else. And we don't want that to happen. That's horrible. So there's different timelines on things. I think I have something like on the order of 10K that will expire next July. And that's not too, this has to be used for travel and especially participants, right? It's not like I can just buy me a computer on that. It has to be spent on something like get together. So that's one thing with a short fuse. And then the main GMT grant, which will live on for at least 3 more years, I think, with extensions and like, we have something like 50K. You know, the plan was to have all these developer conferences and developer training and things like that. So I am eager to have a GMT style summit next year. For those who can participate, those of you who've been on this before know that we like the idea of going to Scripps, La Jolla in California, and spend a week there and hang out with Dave Sandvall. It's a very nice facility to have these kinds of things. So that's sort of, you know, and it's sort of geographically, it's not too crazy for everybody, especially if you have people in Hawaii and Norway and South America and North America, everywhere. You know, there's travel involved. With me being in Europe, because it's easy for me to have something in Europe, there's no question. And we could also have that. We don't have to have, you know, the everybody comes at once kind of thing. We could have some more dedicated things. So, and then we have, you know, do we have separate ones for the wrappers and the core, or do we have one larger one where we all discuss issues that pertains to both the wrappers and the core and how things interact. I think it'll be good to have one of those. So I'm kind of open to what you think about, getting together again at some point in the future. Not too distant future, but 2023.
Scripts looks nice. It's easy
nice.
because we already know how it works.
We know how it works. We know where to go and eat and drink, and we can go shopping and all that stuff. So that's good. We know how Portugal works too now. We had one there. It's
but
also
you have to
possible.
be in the winter. Yeah,
it was
to
in
be in the winter for those for those commodities. Now,
unless you blow the 50, we can blow the 50K on a fancy thing in the summer. Yeah. So we don't have to, we're not gonna have a list by the end of today. I just wanted to plant the seed that, if there are things you would like to be part of on a meeting like this, think about what that would look like and when and so on, because it all gets down to the ugly details of what week and where and when, and then it all falls apart, right? So it's the larger the group, the harder it is to get something organized. But we could also think of smaller groups. If worst comes to worst, I'll just fly down to Joachim every couple of weeks and we'll spend a lot of money that way. I'm sure we can do that.
Yeah, I still didn't see an aurora.
Oh well, you got to come to Norway. That's right. We can have that going. Norway is such a cheap country to have meetings in, I hear.
Yeah, of course. Like summer here.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So have that in. Think about this. If you have thoughts about this, communicate them. Right. I mean, it's very early now. It's not 2023 yet. But it's good to start planning a little bit. All right. 6.5. We said at some point that we should try to crank out a major increment every 6 months, sort of clockwork. That never really happened, but that was the intention, that we wanted to have some sort of, at least that theoretical schedule where we don't let things go for years because we're always one more feature and one more thing to add, and it just goes on and on and on, right? So we want to have a little bit more rapid. We had one on June 18th, that's 6.4. So that's not too long ago, right? So it's not like we're due until Christmas. Usually the 2 days before AG, Walter, we release a new broken version or something. That's the tradition. But given, my whereabouts and the craziness of the next several months and will the cat survive and all that stuff, it may be a little bit too much to ask for much activity coming up. I don't think there's anything obvious on the horizon that needs a 6.5, unless I missed something major. I don't think there's any, major broken thing or new things that were added since June. I think I would have known about that. So my guess is that in early 2023 is probably most likely 6.5 release schedule, whatever that actually offers. Unless,
what you've seen so far with the long options, what do you think the timeline would be for having that be released as a feature?
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot to say one thing about the whole long option. That is the documentation of the long option, right? So we've completely not done anything about long option documentation because that's another big thing. But there's no point writing documentation for things that then changes because we learn it didn't work this way. We got to do something. So I want to do the implementation first under the hood, unreleased, just for testing. And then maybe there will be a sort of a beta version kind of timeline for users who want to use the long option. Not sure. And then at some point we have to document it. And then how do you, I looked at the Unix man pages for Unix tools because they have sort of the same history. They have a lot of short options and then they run out of letters and they added long options. So grep pass, minus B, and then they have some minus long thing. And it's the man page documentation seems to have list them all together. So how would our synopsis line look like, with both? So that's unresolved. How do we want the GMT documentation and the GMT usage to look like with long options? To be determined.
Yeah, I think we created an issue a long time ago, if anyone has any further thoughts on that. Do you foresee GMT expanding past just having aliases for short options and having additional long options that don't translate to a short option or just have these be aliases?
That's a good point, Max. Yeah, just like Unix has some long options that are not short options because of that thing. We can certainly, you know, we do run up against a number of letters in alphabets for some modules that are particularly kludgy that way. One option has been to break some module into smaller modules. I guess Joachim is sort of doing that in the wrapper stage with plotting lines and polygons and symbols sort of separately. That's one way to do it, but on the C command line, we could do the same thing. I mean, we could make, you know, break modules down to smaller modules if it's, as long as we can do a backward compatibility of some sorts. But yeah, I'm guessing as we go forward, at some point, we'll need to add a long option thing to a module that can't have a short option version. And that'll be okay because we're not breaking any backwards compatibility. It's just going forward.
In fact, Max, that was one of the reasons why I at least didn't like the get op idea, because you needed to have the short option with the long option. And in the software package that I have myself, I have various programs that have some options that only have long options because they're barely ever used. And why would you make a short option? So, you know, it's like for expert users, you have the long options there.
Right.
So for short options, you have the long options because the non-expert users cannot remember the short ones. And where they don't have a short option, you have them only for the experts, you have the long options there. So sort of you get the two ways there in one. You get the long options for everybody who cannot remember the short ones, and you get the long options for the experts who need to have something special which nobody else would use, but you know, Joachim just needed to have.
Yes. No, I totally agree. That's very good.
So yeah, I think there will be at some point. We need to see how we can implement it. Now when they have the table of translations, then they cannot be handled as translations anymore.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting case. Yeah, what if you have a long option that's not in the table, or it maybe we'll add it to the table with a no translation symbol or something like that. It will be fixed. But back to Max's question, I think 6.5 is not the timeline for that because it's going to be too much stuff happening before we get to that point of releasing it, I think.
I wanted to ask one thing. Well, I think it was that guy that recently posted something and then he pointed to a free clone of IDL. And I took a quick look. I was with the iPad. And I think they, in their GitHub, they have a kind of what I would like to have. It is a continuous release. Well, I think we have to aim to that. Drop the versions, not drop the versions, not that, but drop the annual release, a more continuous thing. So we can do it in Windows, we can do it in Mac with the bundle. It has the problems that we know, but the bundle is built with scripts using NPAC or whatever. That should work on Linux as well. So you could have something more or less automatic on Windows because it depends on me typing the script, typing the name, but more automatic. And even that one has to change one day. I would need to have a VC, PKG or whatever CMake solution for building with that, not relying on me all the time. And can't we, but okay, going straight to my point, can't we make a Linux kind of bundle? Because that would help me in current situation with Julia as well. Julia is not installable now in Linux because kind of screw it a bit, decided to compile with the latest GCC, and then the thing that Unix likes to do a lot, which is breaking compatibility all the time. Now the libstdc is not compatible anymore, and screwed, to say that way. And would be good if I could have, for example, an official build on Linux, like we have with the Mac. Doesn't that solution will work with Linux as well? Because it will build a package, and who does that is CPAC.
Yeah.
So why can't CPAC build also? If it does that for Mac, why can't it do it also for Linux?
I assume it can. I haven't tried that obviously, but then you get into all the different Linux flavors and distribution.
No, because the Linux, the thing is, if you make a bundle, you have everything inside. The problem with the installations of different Linux is that each one puts everything it's a different place. But if you have a bundle, a binary will work in all the Linux distributions. I think.
Yeah, I think the bundle. I mean, the options for CPAC, it doesn't have something like that. It sounds like it's a bundle for the Mac. It's some sort of Windows installer for Windows, and then I think it's a compressed tarball for Linux, something like that.
I made the bundle. I made the bundle once, not using the full script, and I digged out something like it was a CPAC command. If it was a CPAC command, it should work on Linux as well.
Do any of you who use Linux? Sorry, do any of you who use Linux? Sorry, Joachim. Just going to say, if any of those of you who use Linux, you have any idea about CPAC building an installer for Linux other than a TGZ file with source? I can't hear.
A bit different distribution Linux, but I don't think it's possible to provide a package for all the distributions. I've compiled everything myself on the distributions, but it works differently. Even the binary will be completely different on the different distributions because of the dependencies. You would have to create static versions of everything, and then it would be a huge binary with all the static things, because the libraries are located in different locations on the distributions, and it would make, I think, a lot of problems.
That's what we do in Mac and Windows. We already do that on Mac and on Windows. So I don't see why Linux would be different. Julia, when we install
much more complicated on Linux. Much more complicated. I've done it on Windows too, but it's much more. You can do a lot of things more on Linux, but it's more complicated to do these things, and to make it compatible with all the distributions, it's very, very difficult.
Of course, don't forget.
Let's just add the example of Julia itself. What is recommended of installing Julia on Linux is to use their own binary, not to use any package distribution of Julia. And they have a single installable that has everything, a lot of dependencies, CPAC, LPAC, a lot of things, and they have one that works with all the Linuxes. So I'm sorry, but I believe that can be complicated. That part I don't know. That's why I'm taking this here. But I'm persuaded that it has to work.
Yes, you can try. Good luck. But I feel that with anything more complex than a single binary, it's not possible if you have dependencies with C libraries, with other libraries, with MPI, with GhostScript. These are in different locations in different places with different implementation and different options. So with one of the standard options on one distribution, you don't have these options on the others. So you can never rely on what's existing or not. So I think it's not possible. But
that is what CPAC does. CPAC does exactly that and picks all the dependencies and build the Mac OS bundle with all the dependencies.
Don't forget, Joachim, and I think Klaus Peter was hinting at that, there is only one provider for the Mac software, and that is Apple. And there is only one provider for the Microsoft software, and that is Microsoft. And for Linux, there are 5 big ones to start with all their different flavors, again, with pro and less pro, and so you can never have one binary. And as you see, the distributions that are available are for numerous different versions of Linux. SUSE this, SUSE that, SUSE Expert, SUSE whatever they are called these days. And that's only SUSE, and then you get all the other ones. Indeed, they're all different.
Since I had to mess with the bundle quite a bit, trying to get the GMT MATLAB wrapper to work on a Mac with the bundle, with MathWorks, who ships their own stupid old versions of NetCDF and HD5 and all that stuff. I know a little bit about what's inside the bundle, right? Because I had to basically write some code to rename the libraries that the bundle shipped with, so it wouldn't crash with the stupid libraries that MathWorks shipped, right? So the bundle on the Mac contains all the fundamental low-level libraries like libcurl and Z and all the stuff, and then GS and all the executables. It contains a long list of software libraries that the GMT bundle needs to run. Just like Joachim is sort of alluding to that, if it has Proj, it has Gedal, and Gedal depends on a whole bunch of stuff, and all those things are there too. And there's nothing really in the Apple side of things that are left except maybe some very basic low-level things. So I think in theory, CPAC should be able to do something, but I'm, without trying, I can't really know. But it does include a whole list of libraries from that machine that you're on. And if it's SUSE or CentOS or something, CPAC knows where to find that on your system, and it will store locally in this bundle those binaries. So at least on the same system, it should work. It may not be possible to run this, a universal Linux thing. I think that sounds like a stretch, but even if there was one for CentOS and SUSE and Ubuntu, it could help some people. But, isn't it easy to just say, git push make? I mean, at some point, no. Isn't that simpler?
It's not.
Why is that not simpler?
No. Because many people will just give up doing that if they see that that's the way of doing.
Oh.
We are not talking among them ourselves here, and the other people like us.
I know.
That's the why.
And they're the people who have no super user control over the machines they're working on, and they're running, GMT 5.1 or something, and they complain. We can't fix the world. We can't. It's a lot of problems.
Although we can try.
We can try, and anyway. So, but I think an experiment is what is called for when it comes to the CPAC and Linux, I guess, to see what it can and can't do, because I just don't know. So we're sort of arguing from.
Because you see the point. If we could roll out regular versions, there would be intermediate versions. Would still do the point releases and the major releases, but in between you could release them, and I think that would be very good.
Well, there's like nightly snapshot distributions. A lot of people
it's kind of that, but instead of having somewhere that does it nightly, could do it monthly or something like that.
Yeah, sure. Or, timing is just a CI job, It's
then where would you host that bundle?
GitHub.
GitHub.
Yeah, probably have a monthly. Maybe we wouldn't keep track of all this. Yeah.
The GDL that the other guy pointed a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks, not more than that. Yeah. He has those hosted in GitHub. I don't know how they do to remove the previous ones, because I don't think you want to accumulate all of them. But they are hosted those intermediate versions are hosted in GitHub.
All right, you got to learn some more about these things. Got good comments in the chat there.
Oh yeah, I'm not seeing.
Yeah, I mean, Remco, we wouldn't store daily or weekly snapshot forever. This would be assumed to be ephemeral things. Maybe maybe this week's version. Next week is another version uploaded, but we don't keep the previous week. We only keep the 6.5 and 6.7 and that sort of thing as permanently recorded in Zenodo and on our side. So I wouldn't clog up the GitHub, I guess. Last things on the agenda here. This is not really an action item. It's the GMT server in Hawaii. So right now, it's still alive and fine. That's the Oceania.genericmappingtools.org server. That's the master server that the other ones copy from. My hope there is that we'll find a suitable long-term host for this. And the candidates, my leading candidate is the new entity that's going to be composed of the merger of Iris and UNEVCO. I can't remember what the name is. It has a name, National Geophysical, so something rather. They're in the process, right, for this to happen. So it's not a good time for me to bug them about some trivial thing, because this is trivial. We're talking about a tiny slice of a hard drive and access to upload, and maybe have someone check for problems once in a while. I mean, not a costly thing, but it has permanence to it, right? These are things that will be there for decades, versus my server in Hawaii, probably not going to last for decades. And if I'm not in Hawaii, how long am I going to buy upgrades to a hard drive in Hawaii? And after the bus gets me, and then who's going to pay for those upgrades in Hawaii anyway? So we do want it to move it to an institution, I think. And that's the best I can come up with, Iris UNAVCO merger. There could be things in Europe. I haven't ruled that out. I just don't, not familiar with the infrastructure landscape and associations and things that could do that. I don't really want to do it at the University of Oslo, even though I'm going to be there, because it's the same thing as Hawaii, right? It's just some guy in charge of some server that eventually dies. So if you have great thoughts about, some sort of long-term permanent server, this is for the data server. The GitHub can take care of source codes and documentations and all that stuff. This is more, where do we put all potentially large amounts of data? That's all I got on my script. And we kept it at an hour and 5 minutes. That's not too bad. There's a hand, Walter.
Thanks, Paul. We've been going a bit over an hour and we've mostly heard from the very senior people. So I'd really like to hear from everybody else who sat through this for an hour, what their thoughts are, what's going on, what they're doing with GMT, that sort of thing, please, if we can.
That's a good idea. I'm sorry, I'm sort of a bad whipmeister here. I'm just talking and talking. I love my voice. It's beautiful, pleasant to the ear, all that stuff. But yeah, you guys want to take a little 30 seconds or whatever, you want to say how GMT is working for you or not for you, why you're here, that kind of thing. Is that all right? You can punt. I guess order of things, should we do, I don't know if we have the same screen here, but I have Remco in my top left, so I'll start with Remco. What have you been up to, Remco? I can't hear you.
Yeah. So the last couple of weeks I've been doing holidays, so and still doing, and that's the most important for me at the moment.
Yes.
Otherwise, in GMT, I've been finally using it more often. I've changed positions at UMETSAT, meaning now that I'm a sort of senior scientist position, and that allows me to do a little bit more of science than I used as a leader of a more operational team.
Okay.
So that brings me back to GMT and brings me back to finding things that I would like to change and then wanting to change it. So
excellent.
And given now that we are so fluent in the GitHub, with proposing changes and then accepting them, I think that works. That I really like how that works. You're not anymore punching into the code and then seeing that you've done something that you have ill-devised or ill thought of, because there's always somebody looking over your shoulders. So that's one really positive change that we made over the last 2 years. I think that we started it more or less. So that's good. I'm really getting into the GMT6 nowadays. Also the form of writing, I'm rewriting older scripts into GMT6.
Wow,
and I love it still. I think that was also a really big move that we decided back in. Well, that was in fact GMT5 and
17,
right?
Yes.
maybe 17.
Yeah, it goes back to the summits.
The summit.
In scripts.
Yeah, that's scripts, and that's where I wanted to go, and maybe a summit like that is relevant again to make the next big move, which I do not know yet what it is, but
a shopping list.
I think, and that would involve, I think, all of us, not just the senior ones, but also in fact, should include the junior ones, because they are generally the ones who will need to carry it on afterwards, and they need to be in line with our thoughts. They need to be happy with changes that are going to be made. So if there's going to be one, I think it would be one that decides the future again for the next 5 years, let's say. And I don't mind to come to Oslo, by the way. So
yeah, it's a short up for you. Yeah, yeah, we'll do some regional planning things. I think could be very helpful. Before I go on, I should say that I feel that those week-long summits we had in the past, we had 3, I think, something like that. They've been super useful. They really, really helped change GMT for the better. It's something about sitting and talking and chatting and stuff for over time, not running out of time, than to do email back and forth, just talking loosely and taking notes and having a long list of ideas. So I agree. I think we're due for one because of COVID. We haven't had any. It's just been this kind of screen show. So yeah, thanks for that endorsement. Klaus-Peter, you want to say what you're doing?
Oh yes, I'm using GMT for about I think about 25 years now.
Goodness.
I've very large programs I've written with GMT, so these are long-term projects. So I'm always happy if all the backwards compatibility is working perfectly, because
Excellent.
otherwise, currently I'm using 6.4. And every time I'm compiling a new version, I'm trying if everything is still running or if I have to change or adapt any of the scripts, because it's, I think, about 200 or 300 very large scripts with several hundred kilobytes script code inside. So it's several hundred commands in each of these scripts with, I think I'm using a very large number of options. So if anything changes inside, sometimes it's running because it's compatible, but it changed some output or some visual is different. So I always keep my old output and visually compare it over several weeks in order to see if something changed or if I have to change something in the code. So I'm always happy if it works with the compatibility, though. That's, for me, it's most important, because otherwise I would have to invest several weeks in order to check and recompile and reconfigure something. So that's quite difficult. So, but I'm very happy that it took me a few months to get all the scripts updated from 4 and 5 versions to 6.4, and it really works with everything, and nothing is really broken. So everything which worked years ago still works for me. So it's not a problem. So every feature is still available, and a lot of features I'm using which weren't available a few years ago. So it's very nice to see that developing.
Great. That brings up a couple of things. It's great to hear from you about this, because there's many people like that who have that kind of situation, and that's why we are concerned about backwards compatibility. And we have stated somewhere that GMT 6.x is compatible GMT4. So if you run into anything that has changed, let us know, because we don't necessarily know unless someone tells us that, hey, back in the day this one used to do this, but now it does almost the same but a little bit different and it's causing trouble. That'd be great to hear, because we are trying to make sure, for the same reasons, that we don't break people's research productivity.
So there's one thing I didn't open the issue, but I wondered if there could be an option for the GMT select to completely keep the line lengths of the input. If you make concatenate data file and pass it, pipe it to GMT select, then GMT select filters the line length and only keeps 4096 bytes of each line, and everything else will be cut off.
Oh yeah, right. Yes, there's.
So if there could, I thought it might be because of performance or something, but maybe then there could at least be an option or so, because I do have very long lines. So I have a database with hundreds of thousands of lines, and I'm filtering, and it would be nice to just filter all of the line and not only the first part. Currently, I'm filtering and keeping that in a database and reconstruct it later, but it would be nicer not to have a limitation of line length in GMT select. So that was something which I'm carrying around with me for several years by some workarounds, but it would be nicer if that would keep all the data of the line.
Joachim is laughing because he knows what's
laughing
coming.
Because I'm more than half of the guilt indirectly is to rely on me. You already brought this.
Yes, I said that a few months ago.
You know what you're talking about. The thing is, many times I'm pushing to much less than the 4Ks for other, because we have variables that you use kind of generically in many places in the code. So, and in many places, and that goes to stack allocation. And if you increase that one, we would not increase it only for GMT select. We would increase it for all the code that use that macro length. So you would need, for this case, And I agree. That can be very short for if you have a big table, lots of columns. 4Ks of chart is very short. So I think in that case you should find something for that and similar cases and increase the. But I don't know if that's possible because again it goes down to the machinery of the allocation and reading. The point in here is if we increase it for GMT select, we are increasing for all the code that uses that.
That's the same. Yeah, Klaus-Peter, can I have you
why it's
post
not so simple, but that I agree. That's something that should be worked on because 4Ks is too short for tables.
Klaus-Peter, can I have you post an issue, bring this kind of up on the GitHub as a feature request or whatever you want to call it, so that it doesn't go away?
I do not have a GitHub account, so
okay.
Yeah, everybody has. No, not everyone, but can open.
Yeah.
Okay, but in case that you have some reason for not opening an account in GitHub, you can post it in forum.
The forum. Yeah, that's fine.
And then we will open an issue with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just need to be reminded of it. That's all. I know exactly what the issue is. Joachim and I will have a chat about that.
Yeah.
Joachim, you want to say it's 30 seconds or less how things are for GMT, or just have vacation and you're just enjoying it life?
No, my vacation, but I go to the beach every other day. So I went yesterday and go tomorrow. Today I'll stay here. I have my nephews around, so they are happy going in and out. I've been doing not much on the GMT coding. I have that thing with PS convert to solve out. Well, it's a minor thing because otherwise I'm just can't stop improving things and adding things to gmt.gl that does everything that I need and I will possibly need in a much easier way. So that has been my activity with the GMT.
Yeah, great. Weiji, you want to give us a quick spiel of PyGMT status?
Yeah, I haven't actually been working on PyGMT much for the last 2 months. I've been away on a intensive program, so I just got back like literally this week. Some free time back this week. Dong and Max might be able to give you. And Yvonne actually has been a bit more active on the PyGMT side. I've mostly been
great.
Yeah, just starting to pick up some regular maintenance stuff this week. But yeah, I'll probably give maybe someone else on the PyGMT team to talk more.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks. Max is next on my screen.
Yeah, since the last community meeting, I think the EGU short course happened with Weiji, Andre, and Leo. So that went well. It was virtual and it's all on YouTube if anyone's interested. I also gave a talk on PyGMT at SciPy that received really good feedback. And I also heard from people there that they appreciated the backwards compatibility component of GMT. And then I've been trying to review pull requests, but as expected, have had a bit less time since switching jobs.
Sure.
I also will have to leave to catch a train in 2 minutes, so I will see other people's updates on YouTube later on.
All right. Thanks for coming, Max. Hey, Andre, nice to meet you. Have a quick update.
Nice to meet you. So yeah, thanks for. So I'm very happy to be here. I feel like I'm a little bit like a gate crashing here, but so I'm a user of GMT since '94, and I learned in a ship with like no internet connection. So I really ended to learn GMT with the people that was on board, and since then I'm Unix user, so I use it all the time in the Unix. And then before the pandemic, I was more or less like a MATLAB lover and anti-Python. And then because of my students and my classes, I said, okay, I have to learn Python. And then now MATLAB is like the girlfriend's names that it was good, but you forget, you know? Yeah. So it's like moving to the PyGMT, and I work with AG, Max, and Leo, and thank you guys. Dong and Federico also showed me some clues on the forum. and I'm here to help. So learning every day more and more, and maybe I try to help Wei Ji and the guys with the PyGMT, because I'm really loving the Python sides. So just that.
Great, yeah, thanks a lot. I look forward to having more of you on these calls. Dong, how's China treating you? You doing okay?
Yeah, it's pretty good, but as you mentioned, the summit in 2023, I don't think I can join you because my visa, my passport expired, and it seems that in China I cannot renew my passport. And if I go to US and go back, I still need to quarantine for 10 days. So it's really, unless something changed in the next in the next months, I don't think I can go to US or any other countries.
Yeah, I figured it's been difficult, but we'll see. You know, years will go by and maybe things will change. We'll just keep you in the fold, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So for PyGMT, we had a release in early July, just maybe 2 weeks after GMT 6.4. And we are slowly trying to increase, pumping the GMT version to 6.4 in PyGMT. And in the maybe in the last half months, we are mainly work on the documentation and the maintenance of PyGMT. And I'm also busy with writing some proposals. So they ready to work on the new features in PyGMT. Yeah.
Great. Oh, sounds great. Federico, I know what you've been up to, but you can tell us.
Hi. I've been working lately with some mathematical data. I want to make some maps of the Argentinian shelf from 2D data. And I have some issues that I asked Paul, but I'm waiting. Don't worry. Yeah, and also working on learning some GMT-SAR. I make the UNATCO course last July. And then also when I'm working on the GMT with the DCW Zenodo repository, which is already there, published, and also with the remote datasets. I think that's all.
Yeah, that's great. That reminds me, we should put the Zenodo link up on some place that discusses the data sets.
Maybe also make the other data sets. We want to make the
HSSC, yeah, maybe we'll do the same thing for that. So it's sort of kept the same way. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good point. Hi, Yvonne. First time I see you, so welcome and tell us what you're doing.
Hello. I'm a PhD student for 1.5 years now, and I started using GMT doing my bachelor's thesis in 2017, I think. Yeah, 2017.
All right.
And now I'm using PyGMT because I thought it would be good to have a Python tool, since I'm using OpsPy since my PhD, and for my studies, for bachelor and master, I mostly used MATLAB. So I think the most people start with MATLAB. And I really enjoy the thing with Python. It's nice to have all the Python functionality together with all the functionality you have in GMT. And the code, it's simply more readable after some time. And I think it helps to use GMT more if you have only one task. Nobody simply would make a map with GMT once, because the learning curve is too slow. And I started contributing a bit to PyGMT, but I think I have to learn a lot how the whole thing works, because I could contribute more complicated tasks. But I think GMT in Python is the right way to go, because at least in seismology, we have a lot of Python stuff currently.
Right. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah. Glad you're on board. You mentioned MATLAB. That's good. At some point, we'll have to have a MATLAB GMT Max discussion too, because there are a lot of MATLAB users, whether we like it or not, that could benefit from.
I am a MATLAB user.
There's a MATLAB user up there.
I'm a MATLAB user.
I'm occasionally a MATLAB user, but I'm not using GMT Max much.
Miron is 200,000 lines of MATLAB.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're definitely a MATLAB user. All right,
Yeah.
Walter, you get to finish us off, I guess. What you're up to.
Well, I haven't had any time to go under the hood in GMT in quite a while. I'm just busy with the nuts and bolts of low-level radar altimeter data processing. I'm having a lot of fun with that. And when I get back to doing other things, it will be, you know, very applied stuff like analyzing how we measure very large waves in severe storms and things like that. So only tangentially connected to GMT lately. Sorry for that, but I'm delighted to see newer faces on this call. Paul, just one aside for the really old people. I was laughing when we were talking about how to add more global grids, and you said things are set up for people to work, you know, locally, and that takes me back. Some of you don't know that the reason we started building GMT in the first place was that when we were grad students, the data sets collected by ships at sea were organized so you could work on the data from one cruise at a time, but there was no way to do a global search for features that might have been seen in many different cruises. And so that was the basis that actually started us writing GMT in the 1980s. So the problem of people designing data structures and so on to facilitate local problems rather than global ones is still with us after 40 years.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, Walter. It's definitely true. I don't see any radical improvements on that thing. Hey, anyway, I have to move on myself here. It's almost coming up on 3:30 local time in England. I want to thank you all for taking the time. I know you guys are on vacation. I'm looking forward to a vacation next week myself. So I'm not sure when the next community meeting will be. I don't want it to go away until November. So I'll try to have one either before I leave Hawaii. I think that'll be good. That will help a little bit with some time zones, and then we'll just wing it when I get relocated in Oslo, and we'll do it from there. And then we'll try to get Roger on board too. That'll be 12, 13, 14 time zones to struggle with. But anyway, that's what we're up against. Again, thanks everybody for contributing. Look forward to see you next time and eventually physically at a meeting.
Well, thank you. See you next time.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Take care.